music history textbooks really spooks me out. Susan McClary seems to have been pretty accurate so far in her description of musicology and her introduction to feminine endings. Trying to change them must be almost like entering the last forbidden and very unwelcoming room in Knight Bluebeard's castle. Alma Fanny Claire, where have you been all my musicological life? Where can I listen to your music, learn more about you, find the scores to your music and understand how this situation has arisen?
Of course, help is readily available, if not in our general music history books or in our narrow minds. It's present in other research literature as well as in Camilla at our musicology department and in several online resources. And of course we are here, Alfreda. We have to be the heroes in this situation. It seems like there are so extremely few women composers in this world, and that even fewer of them are considered important enough to be included in music history textbooks. Why? Oh why? We just can't accept the rubbish we've heard about women not having any real impact or fan base, or that composing music was only men's business. Common sense forbids us accepting such an opinion even when stated by these sweet, polite, retired elderly male musicologists.
Wolfgang, I think the historical re-examination of our musical heritage in light of feminist theory provides a new set of questions about our culture: who produces it, why they produce it, what they are expressing, whom they are expressing it to, why certain works and forms have become valued and mainstream, why others have remained outside it, what function of music in past and present societies is.
Put it in historical musicology. Is it still possible? Elderly male author of our music history textbooks only tried to create some kind of order in what appeared to them as a historical chaos. Maybe they needed to elaborate on their stories about dead white hetero men to create some kind of reality effect. They picked and chose, selected and combined whatever evidence they needed to fill out patterns they wished us to perceive. That is why history proved so rewarding to them. It was a creative act of imposing order on chaos. For every image exposed as subjective, new ones were theorized as real. If they were in danger of being unworthy of anything or anyone, it probably is as readers. They perplexed us with their scholarly angst, annoyed us with their narcissistic self-torment, and exasperated us with their defensive theorizing. I think this very paralyzing fear of taking human risks that have rendered authoring gender-balanced music history textbooks impossible.
Following Karl Dahlhaus' debating of the canon concept within musicology in the 1970s, scholars working on canonicity have met with contentious issues distinguishing old and new musicology. With Joseph Kerman's A Few Canonic Variations, canon discourses of the 1980s and 1990s flared up again. In his 1984 article, Jen Ling discussed whether Europe's music history is a reality or ethnocentric fiction. William Weber's The History of Musical Canon contributed to a more systematic definition of a European canon of masterpieces.
Criticism against the canons partly focuses on how traditional music historical presentations imply rhetorical and discursive registers creating a reality effect, partly on canonization as it materializes in repertoire selection and recordings and concerts. Both general music history books, books on women's music history and media debate provide images of discriminatory practices responsible for creating what is presented.
Is that why several women have composed good music that was performed and acclaimed in their time, and it now only collects dust in library storages? They might as well could have been noted in invisible ink.
Yes, scholars are not the only ones to engage in the teaching concert and history canons. A disgruntled English student launched an online campaign to ensure that women composers were represented on her A-level music syllabus, which featured 63 male composers and no female. To me, this was a wake-up call. It put through a strong message that we can do something about the textbook situation. So ever since, I have investigated the question and found recordings of music by women composers on Spotify and Nexo's Music. It's easily accessible. Spotify have made a free 78-hour music playlist containing 1200 years of women composers. It takes you from medieval times to now. Several people also have gathered information and presented it on YouTube. Music her storybooks can be found on the study list for the Women in European Music History course. Also in Sweden they even have biographies and scores by women composers at the Swedish Musical Heritage website.
Sounds groundbreaking and very brave. I will visit their website. They must have done a lot really hard work, because according to Marcia Citron it's all too easy to recycle dilemmas associated with traditional great man approaches. They seem to be an exception in a world characterized by a general lack of new ideas as to how to write music history. In her book on gender and the musical canon, Citron says male critics internalized musical values from male predecessors and contemporaries. Conditions of response formed a pre-evaluative context for the structuring of their discourse.
Indeed, including men and women in this project is truly groundbreaking and involved almost the whole Swedish musicological research community, and the project is a rare exception in a world where relationships between women's and men's music history is men's and women's music, as well as interaction between female and male composers' productions are not adequately explored or rewritten. Recently, though, humanities have pointed out how canonized dead white men and their history do not represent universal and objective narratives, but rather certain hegemonic ideals. Until the Swedish Musical Heritage Project, neither music history nor narratives about it seemed to have prompted affirmative action on behalf of our women composers or sparked renewed theoretical reflection.
Still, a lot of work has to be done. Even biased mainstream music history textbooks still focus solely on male composers producing culture for a predominantly female audience consisting of culturally interested middle-aged aunties. Even worse, male composers seem to generate far more interest, research funding and research literature.
I think that all too general misconceptions about an alleged lack of historical women composers serves as explanation of why so many recordings, concerts and opera productions focus solely on music by male composers. It helps us study the actions and reasoning paving the way for women composers and musicians. The assignments and literature on women in European music history moves between different musicological fields, in particular the cultural study of music, reception analysis, historiography and womenist studies. We are going to employ methods of history writing, source critics, etc. and cultural analysis focusing on gender. Let's end this course together. What I really found interesting is the opportunity to study the interaction between works by women composers, critique on music history and studies of music reception combined with historically changeable male and female gender roles.
Where do I start?
Register. Take a good look on the Moodle platform, a literature list, the assignments and what you want to study in depth for the last assignment. Note that you also have to think about how to distribute the knowledge we created to future students and decide how you want to communicate it. The first assignment is submitting an individual study plan for Camera's approval. If you have any questions, our digital conference time is every Wednesday 9 to 10 a.m.
I can't wait to find out more about who our women composers were. I hope I can find out more about what their actions, experiences and roles might have in common. Now I can learn more about how they differ from each other and their male counterparts. I've also heard that in our search for new understandings of how the present textbook situation has arisen, the course will encompass musical as well as institutional sociological and economical discourses. The literature examines interplays between works, music history and music criticism combined with women's and men's changing gender roles in course of history.